Marcus, at 39 years old, believed in the quiet power of consistency. It was the principle that had guided his life. From his 14 years at the distribution center in South Fulton, Atlanta, where he'd worked his way up to warehouse supervisor, to the steady $61,000 annual salary that came with it. It was the principle behind the meticulously maintained 2018 Ford F-150, a $28,000 beast of a truck he'd bought with a decade of savings, and the principle behind the love he had for his wife, Tasha. Today marked their 8th anniversary, and consistency demanded celebration. He clocked out at 3:15 p.m., an hour and 45 minutes early. His shift manager, a man who had seen Marcus come in through rain, flu, and Georgia heat waves, just nodded. "Go on, Marcus, she's a lucky woman." Marcus felt a swell of pride. He was a simple man, he knew that. He didn't have a fancy degree or a corner office in one of the glass towers downtown. What he had was a strong back, a steady paycheck, and a heart he had given completely to one woman. He stopped at a florist on Old National Highway, the one Tasha always admired when they drove past. He spent $85 on a bouquet of stargazer lilies, her favorite. The scent filled the cab of his truck, a sweet, heavy perfume of anticipation. He imagined her face, the way her deep brown skin would seem to glow when she smiled, her dark eyes lighting up. He had the rest of the evening planned. A simple, home-cooked meal of the salmon she loved, a bottle of the $25 Moscato she preferred, and a small velvet box holding a delicate gold necklace. It had cost him $450, a significant piece of his last bonus, but he knew she deserved it. He pictured her clasping it around her neck, her elegant locks tied up to show it off. He had no idea that the world he was so carefully building, the one he was driving home to celebrate, had already been condemned, appraised, and divided. He had no idea that in less than 15 minutes, the scent of those lilies would forever be linked to the sound of his own heart breaking. Their life was built on his consistency and her aspirations. Marcus never thought of it as a bad thing. He loved her ambition, the way she talked about wanting more. Their 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in a quiet South Fulton subdivision was a testament to that. It was his name on the deed, his savings that had covered the $22,000 down payment, and his bank account that the $1,250 mortgage was drafted from every month. But it was Tasha who had made it a home. She'd picked out the $1,800 sectional sofa from Rooms to Go, the $600 dining set from Wayfair, and the endless array of decorative pillows that seemed to cost $50 a pop. He never questioned it. His $61,000 salary wasn't extravagant, but with careful budgeting, he made it work. He drove his paid-for truck, packed his own lunch, a simple turkey sandwich on wheat bread and an apple, and wore his $30 work boots until the soles were smooth. He remembered a Saturday 2 months prior. He was in the backyard, wrestling with the lawnmower, a stubborn 10-year-old Craftsman model he'd bought for $150 at a yard sale. The pull cord had snapped, and he was carefully threading a new one. Tasha came to the back door, dressed for brunch with her sisters. She was wearing a new floral dress, a piece he'd never seen before, that hugged her frame perfectly. "Baby, I'm heading out," she said, her voice bright. "Don't forget we have that cookout at Brianna's tomorrow." He looked up, wiping grease from his hands onto an old rag. "Okay, beautiful. Have fun." He saw the small, white shopping bag on the counter behind her. "New dress?" She did a little twirl. "Just a little something from Macy's. It was on sale." He knew on sale at Macy's could still mean $120. He also knew her brunch at that trendy spot in Midtown would easily run another $75, paid for from their joint checking account, the account where his entire paycheck was deposited every 2 weeks. He didn't say anything. He just nodded, a familiar, tight feeling in his chest. "You look amazing in it," Her smile was dazzling. It always was. It was the smile that made him forget the numbers, the constant draining arithmetic of his life. "Thanks, honey." "Don't work too hard on that old thing," she said, gesturing at the mower. "You should just buy a new one, a nice John Deere riding mower like Dion has." Dion was her brother-in-law, a man who sold luxury cars and lived in a $600,000 house in Alpharetta. A new John Deere riding mower was $2,500. "This one just needs a new cord, Tasha. It'll be good as new." She sighed, a soft, disappointed sound that felt heavier than a shout. "Always fixing, Marcus. Always making do. Don't you ever just want new?" She didn't wait for an answer. She blew him a kiss and was gone, the scent of her expensive $110 Chanel perfume lingering in the humid air. He looked at the broken mower, then at his grease-stained hands. He made do. He had to. For her to have new, he had to be the one who fixed the old. He thought it was a partnership. He thought it was love. He had no idea it was a transaction where he was the only one paying. The financial pressure had been a low hum in their marriage for years, but recently it had grown into a persistent, whining engine of discontent. Tasha had quit her job as a receptionist, a modest $32,000 a year position, about a year after they were married. "It's just so draining, baby," she had said, her head on his chest. "And the people are so rude. I want to focus on us, on making this house a real home." He had agreed. He wanted her to be happy. He thought his salary, while not huge, was enough for two people to live on comfortably, if not lavishly. He was wrong. Her tastes grew, seemingly in direct opposition to their financial reality. It started with small things. She switched from her $8 drugstore makeup to the $60 foundation from Sephora. Her weekly trips to Target became bi-weekly pilgrimages to Perimeter Mall. He'd see the credit card statements, a card that was technically in both their names, but was for all intents and purposes hers. A $350 charge at Nordstrom, a $220 bill from a spa day with her sister, Brianna, a $400 weekend getaway to Savannah because she needed to get away from the city. When he tried to talk to her about it gently, carefully, it always ended the same way. "Marcus, are you saying I can't have nice things?" she'd ask, her eyes welling up with tears. "Do you know how embarrassing it is when Brianna and Keisha talk about their trips to Cabo, and I'm sitting here talking about re-grouting the bathroom tile?" "That's not what I'm saying, Tasha. I just mean we need a budget. We need to track where the money is going." "You track it then," she'd snap, the tears vanishing, replaced by a cold fire. "You're the one who's obsessed with every single dollar. It's just money, Marcus. It's meant to be spent, to be enjoyed. You act like you want to be buried with it." The fight would end with him retreating, apologizing, and the spending would continue. He started taking on overtime shifts, grueling 12-hour days on Saturdays just to build back the cushion in their savings account, a cushion she seemed to view as a personal slush fund. The $17,450 he had painstakingly saved over a decade was now hovering just under $5,000. He felt like a man running on a treadmill, sweating and striving, while someone else kept turning up the speed. What he didn't understand was that she wasn't just turning up the speed. She was getting ready to unplug the machine entirely. The cruelty wasn't always about money. Sometimes it was smaller, sharper, and more personal. It was in the way she talked about his job, his life, his very essence. Her family, particularly her older sister Brianna and her younger brother Jamal, were the primary audience for these casual degradations. They were a tight-knit clan, and Marcus had always felt like an outsider, a guest with conditional visiting hours. One evening, about 4 months before the anniversary, they were at Brianna and Dayon's sprawling Alpharetta home for a family dinner. The house was a monument to conspicuous consumption, with soaring ceilings, gleaming hardwood floors, and a kitchen that looked like a showroom for Wolf appliances, a setup that easily cost over $50,000. Dayon was holding court, talking about a recent commission he'd made selling a $120,000 Porsche Panamera. And the guy didn't even blink. Wrote the check right there, Dion bragged, sipping a glass of what he announced was a $90 bottle of Cabernet. Brianna, draped in a silk caftan that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly truck payment had been, smiled proudly. "My husband knows how to close." She then turned her gaze to Marcus, who was quietly eating his grilled chicken. "Marcus, how are things down at the box factory?" The table chuckled. Tasha laughed loudest of all. "It's a distribution center, Bree," Tasha corrected, but her tone was laced with the same mocking amusement. "He supervises the boxes." Marcus felt his face grow hot. He looked at his wife, expecting her to defend him, to say something, anything. Instead, she just smiled at her sister, a shared, secret look of superiority passing between them. He set his fork down. "It's a good job. It pays the bills." "Oh, we know it pays the bills, honey," Brianna said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Tasha tells us how hard you work, all those long hours. It must be so tiring, all that lifting." "I'm a supervisor. I manage a team of 20 people, coordinate inbound and outbound freight logistics for the entire Southeast region," Marcus said, his voice level, controlled. He was proud of his work, of the complexity and responsibility it entailed. Dion waved a dismissive hand. "Logistics, schmogistics. At the end of the day, you're moving boxes for someone else. You're building someone else's dream, man." He leaned back, patting his stomach. "You got to get your own dream." The conversation moved on, but Marcus felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He looked at Tasha again. She was nodding along with Dayon, her eyes shining with admiration for her brother-in-law's empty, self-satisfied pronouncements. She didn't look at Marcus once for the rest of the dinner. Driving home that night, the silence in his F-150 was thick and suffocating. "You didn't have to let them talk to me like that," he finally said as they pulled into their driveway. Tasha unbuckled her seatbelt. "Oh, Marcus, don't be so sensitive. They were just teasing you. That's how my family is." "It didn't feel like teasing, Tasha. It felt like they were looking down on me. And you were right there with them." She turned to him, her face hardening in the dim glow of the dashboard lights. "Well, what do you want me to do? Lie? Pretend you're some high-flying CEO? You're a warehouse supervisor, Marcus. It is what it is. If you don't like how they see you, maybe you should do something to change it." She got out of the truck and slammed the door, leaving him sitting alone in the dark. It was what it is. The words echoed in his mind. It wasn't a defense of him. It was an indictment. He was not enough. His hard work, his steady love, his entire life, it was not enough for her. That night, for the first time, he felt a flicker of fear. He was running as fast as he could, and she was telling him it wasn't even the right race. The incidents began to stack up, each one a small paper cut on his soul. There was the time she forgot to mention his company's annual awards picnic, instead making plans for them to attend a gallery opening with a friend of hers who sold abstract art for $5,000 a canvas. "It's just a bunch of people in company t-shirts eating cheap hot dogs, Marcus," she'd said when he found out. "It's not a big deal." It was a big deal to him. He was receiving an award for 10 years of perfect attendance, a testament to his consistency. He went alone. Then there was the argument over the vacation. He had saved up his 3 weeks of paid time off and proposed a road trip, a simple, affordable trip to the Smoky Mountains to hike and relax. "We could rent a cabin for $150 a night, pack our own food, just be together," he suggested. Tasha had looked at him as if he'd suggested they live in a tent. A cabin? Marcus, no, I cannot. Brianna and Dion are going to Jamaica. Keisha and her boyfriend are going to Miami. I want to go somewhere with a beach and room service. I need a real vacation, not camping. Tasha, we can't afford a $4,000 trip to Jamaica right now. You know that. The savings account? There you go with the savings account again, she exclaimed, throwing her hands up in exasperation. It's always the savings account. What is the point of having money if you're too scared to use it? I work hard keeping this house together. I deserve a real vacation. You don't work, Tasha, he said, the words slipping out, quiet and sharp. The room went silent. She stared at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and fury. It was the first time he had ever said it so plainly. I can't believe you just said that to me, she whispered, her voice trembling. After everything I do. I manage this household. I create a beautiful space for you to come home to. I host my family so you have people around. That is work, Marcus. It is emotional labor, and it is exhausting. He felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly overshadowed by a weary resentment. He was exhausted too. He was exhausted from the overtime, from the budgeting, from feeling like he was constantly failing some unspoken test. The fight ended as they all did, with his reluctant concession. She booked a 4-day trip to an all-inclusive resort in Cancun for herself and Brianna, using $3,200 from the joint account. It's better this way, she'd said. You wouldn't have enjoyed it anyway. You can't relax. He spent those 4 days at home patching a hole in the drywall where a picture had fallen, changing the oil in her 2019 Honda Accord, a $24,000 car with a $450 monthly payment he covered, and feeling a profound, bone-deep loneliness. He was a provider, a fixer, a function. He was beginning to realize he had stopped being a partner a long time ago. She had made a critical mistake, though. In her anger and entitlement, she had shown him exactly how she saw him, not as a husband, but as a resource. And resources, she was about to learn, can be shut off. The weeks leading up to their anniversary were strangely quiet. Tasha was sweeter, more affectionate. She'd make his coffee in the morning, kiss him goodbye, and send him little texts during the day. Thinking of you, baby, one read. Can't wait for you to come home, said another. Marcus, starved for affection, soaked it up. He thought they were turning a corner. He thought the quiet was peace. He mistook the calm before the storm for the clearing of the sky. He interpreted her change in behavior as a rekindling of their love, a return to the early days. It wasn't. It was the final phase of her plan. It was the careful, calculated lulling of the target before the trap was sprung. He was being fattened up with affection before the slaughter, and he was so hungry he never even saw the cage. At 4:47 p.m., Marcus turned onto his street, the stargazer lilies sitting on the passenger seat, their cloying sweetness a stark contrast to the acid churning in his gut. The house looked normal. Tasha's Honda was in the driveway, next to a familiar-looking silver Lexus, Brianna's $55,000 SUV. He also saw Jamal's beat-up 2005 Nissan Altima parked at the curb. A family meeting, apparently. He felt a flash of annoyance. He had wanted this evening to be just for them, for him and Tasha. Her family's constant presence was a drain, a Greek chorus of judgment and entitlement. Still, he took a deep breath. Maybe they were there to help her set up a surprise for him. Hope, he realized later, was a stubborn, foolish weed. He parked his F-150 in the driveway, careful not to block Brianna. He grabbed the flowers and the small velvet box from the glove compartment, tucking it into his pocket. The air was warm and thick with the promise of a summer evening. He walked up the concrete path, his work boots feeling heavy. As he reached the front door, he heard voices from the open dining room window. Laughter. Tasha's laugh, high and clear, followed by Brianna's deeper, throaty chuckle. He smiled. It was good to hear her happy. He put his key in the lock, but before he turned it, a snippet of conversation drifted through the window, sharp and clear. It was Jamal's voice, young and greedy. "I'll take the truck. He won't need it where he's going." Marcus froze, his hand trembling on the key. The truck? His truck? What did he mean? He won't need it? He pulled the key back silently, his heart beginning to pound a frantic, heavy rhythm against his ribs. He crept closer to the window, staying in the shadow of the large azalea bush he'd planted 2 years ago. The flowers in his hand suddenly felt like a funeral wreath. "Jamal, you are not taking his truck," Brianna said, but there was no force in her voice. It was amusement. "Dion said we can probably get 20, maybe 22 grand for it if we sell it private party. We'll split that." "Split it? Why split it?" "Tasha, you said I could have it," Jamal whined. Then he heard his wife's voice, the voice he thought was his anchor. It was calm, practical, and utterly chilling. "We'll see, Jamal. Let's get through the big items first. The house is the main thing. The lawyer said, since his name is the only one on the deed, I'll have to file for separation and claim spousal support and equity. He said as long as I establish residency and he abandons the property, my claim is stronger. So, Monday, I'm going to tell him I need some space, that I'm not happy." Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. He leaned against the warm brick of the house, his legs suddenly weak. Abandon the property. The words were clinical, a strategy. This wasn't a spontaneous conversation. It was a planning session. Brianna spoke again, her voice like ice. "Just make sure you cry when you do it. He's a sucker for your tears. Tell him you need to go stay with me for a while to think. The second he's gone for work on Tuesday, we'll have the locks changed. The lawyer said that's critical. Possession is everything." "What about the bank accounts?" Jamal asked. "How much is in there?" "The joint account is almost empty. I moved most of it to my new personal account last week," Tasha said, and Marcus could hear the pride in her voice. "About 3,000. But his personal savings, that's the real prize. There's over 5 grand in there. He has it linked to the joint account for overdraft protection. I have the login. I wrote it down a few months ago when he was paying bills. He thinks I'm so bad with technology, he never even thought to question it." She laughed. A light, carefree sound. It was the ugliest sound Marcus had ever heard. "I made a list," Tasha continued. Marcus could hear the rustle of paper. "Okay, so, the F-150, we agreed, we sell. The tools in the garage, Dion said his contractor friend will buy the whole lot for $1,000 cash. The television, the big one, the 65-inch Samsung he bought for the Super Bowl, that was $1,200. Brianna, you wanted that, right?" "Yes, it'll be perfect for the guest room," Brianna confirmed. "The new couch, we sell. The bedroom set, we sell. Jamal, you can have the old lawnmower," she said, and they all laughed again. A cruel, dismissive laugh that tore through Marcus like shrapnel. His mower. The one he was always fixing. He stood there, hidden by the bush, listening as his wife, with the help of her family, calmly and methodically liquidated his life. They were vultures, picking over a carcass, and the most horrifying part was, the man they were carving up was still alive, standing just 10 feet away, holding a bouquet of her favorite flowers. The scent of the lilies was suffocating now, a sweet, sickly smell of decay. He looked down at the flowers, then at the silent, locked door. He had been about to walk through that door into an ambush. He had been about to smile, to present his gifts, to celebrate 8 years of what he thought was a partnership, only to be devoured. A cold, terrifying clarity washed over him, extinguishing the fire of his panic and leaving behind something hard and dense as granite. He backed away from the window, his movements slow and deliberate. He did not make a sound. He walked back down the path, each step an act of supreme self-control. He got into his truck, the truck they had just sold for him, and placed the flowers on the passenger seat. He looked at them one last time, a monument to his own blindness. Then he put the key in the ignition, started the engine, and drove away. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he could never go home again. Not to that house, not to that woman. The life he knew was over, but a new one, a life of cold, hard justice, was just beginning. They had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated the simple man who was good at fixing things. And he was about to fix this. The first few hours were a blur of numb autopilot. Marcus drove, the setting sun casting long shadows across the Atlanta highways, the city lights beginning to blur through the unshed tears in his eyes. He ended up in the parking lot of a 24-hour Kroger on Cascade Road, the lilies still perfuming the cab of his truck. He sat there for a long time, the engine off, the sounds of his wife's voice playing on a loop in his head. He's a sucker for your tears. I have the login. He won't need it where he's going. He finally got out, walked to a trash can near the entrance, and shoved the $85 bouquet deep inside, followed by the $450 necklace, still in its velvet box. He didn't want the money back. He wanted to erase the intention, to discard the love he had so foolishly invested. As he turned back to his truck, his phone buzzed. It was Tasha. "Hey, baby, where are you? Getting hungry over here." The text was accompanied by a kissing face emoji. His fingers trembled as he typed a reply. He had to be normal. He had to be the predictable, simple Marcus she thought he was. That was his only weapon now. Her arrogance was his shield. "Hey, sorry, got held up at work. A shipment came in late. Be home in a bit," he typed. It was a plausible lie. It had happened before. "Okay, hurry. I have a surprise for you." The heart emoji felt like a punch to the gut. A surprise. He knew what the surprise was. It was a performance, a prelude to his own execution. He needed to play his part perfectly. He drove to a cheap motel off the interstate, the kind with flickering neon signs and doors that opened directly to the parking lot. He paid $72 in cash for one night. The room smelled of stale smoke and bleach. He sat on the edge of the stiff polyester bedspread and took out his phone. He opened his banking app. There it was, the joint checking account, balance $3,147.28, and below it, his personal savings account, balance $5,281.90. He stared at the numbers. His money. The product of thousands of hours of his life, of sweat and exhaustion. She had called it the real prize. He felt a surge of cold fury. This was not about a broken heart anymore. This was about survival. He spent the next hour online, researching. Legal separation in Georgia. How to freeze bank accounts. Changing direct deposit. He was a supervisor. He managed logistics. This was just another kind of logistics. It was about assets, timelines, and execution. It was a problem to be solved. At 9:30 p.m., Tasha called. He let it ring 4 times before answering, trying to sound tired and annoyed from work. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. "Marcus, where are you? You said you'd be home soon." Her voice was laced with a slight impatience. Her plan had a schedule, and he was disrupting it. "I'm so sorry, baby. It's a mess down here. The night shift manager called out sick, and I have to cover for a few hours until they can find a replacement. I feel terrible about tonight." He hated the lie, hated the feel of it in his mouth, but it was a necessary tool. He heard her sigh, a sound of theatrical disappointment. "Oh no, on our anniversary? That's awful." There was a pause. He could almost hear the gears turning in her head, recalculating. "Well, okay. I guess it can't be helped. Just come home as soon as you can, okay? Don't be too late. I won't, I promise. I love you, he said, and the words tasted like ash. I love you too, she replied, her voice smooth as silk. She believed him. Of course, she did. He was just simple Marcus, the man who fixed things, the man who always came home. After he hung up, he sat in the silence of the dingy motel room and let himself feel it all, for a full 10 minutes. The grief, the rage, the humiliation. He thought of her laughter. He thought of her brother claiming his truck. He thought of them picking over the bones of his life, like it was a weekend yard sale. When the 10 minutes were up, he stood up. The emotional part was over. Now it was time for the logistics. The next morning, he called in sick to work for the first time in over 5 years. He told his manager he had a family emergency. It wasn't a lie. He was his only family now, and this was an emergency. He spent the morning playing the part of the dutiful, apologetic husband via text. Morning, baby. So sorry again about last night. Still stuck dealing with this mess? Might have to work most of the day. Her reply came almost instantly. OMG, you're kidding me. Marcus, this is ridiculous. You need to tell them you have a life. The annoyance was palpable. He was messing up her timeline. She needed him out of the house so she could have her fake breakdown and flee to Brianna's. I know, I'm trying. Just one of those things, he texted back. Don't worry about me. Have a day with your sisters or something. You deserve it after our anniversary was ruined. He was handing her the opportunity on a silver platter. Maybe I will, she replied. I'm feeling really down about all this. He could see the narrative forming. He's so neglectful. He works all the time. He ruined our anniversary. It was the perfect justification for her leaving. He was making it easy for her. This was his new strategy. Play the fool to catch the fool. Later that afternoon, he made a calculated call. Hey, Tasha. I feel so bad. Look, I know it's not the same, but I just transferred some money to the joint account. Go buy yourself that purse you were looking at last week, the one at Coach. A late anniversary gift. The purse was $450. It was a sacrifice, but it was also a test. There was a moment of surprised silence on her end. Oh, baby, you don't have to do that. I want to. Please, go get it. Well, okay, she said, her voice instantly brighter. Thank you, Marcus. That's so sweet of you. He hung up the phone and immediately logged back into his banking app. He watched. It took less than an hour. A charge from the Coach store at Lenox Square, $451.18. She had bought it. And then, 10 minutes later, another transaction appeared. A mobile transfer from the joint account to another account he didn't recognize. The amount was $3,000. It was the money she had claimed she'd already moved. She had lied. She was getting bolder, greedier, thinking he was distracted and guilty. He took a screenshot, and then another, and another. He was no longer just a victim. He was a collector of evidence. The price of his education was a $450 purse, but the knowledge he gained was priceless. She thought he was playing checkers. She had no idea he was setting up a chessboard. On Monday morning at 8 a.m., Marcus walked into the law offices of Miller & Associates, a firm he'd found through a referral from a guy at work. The office was in a modest building in Fayetteville, far from the gleaming towers of Buckhead. It felt solid, grounded, just like the woman who met him in the conference room. Her name was Anita Miller. She was a sharp, no-nonsense black woman in her 50s, with her hair in immaculate salt and pepper twists and a gaze that seemed to see right through him. Mr. Jackson, she said, her voice calm and deep, your phone call was compelling. Tell me everything from the beginning, and don't leave out a single detail. Marcus took a deep breath. He had spent the weekend in the $72 a night motel, documenting everything. He pulled a yellow legal pad from his worn leather satchel, a $50 gift from his team at work 5 years ago. He had organized his entire life, his entire betrayal, into a series of bullet points. "My wife Tasha and I have been married for 8 years," he began. He told her about his job, his salary, his home. He detailed Tasha's spending, the credit card statements he had printed from his online account, the $3,200 Cancun trip, the constant pressure for more. He explained the dynamic with her family, the casual insults, the way they made him feel small. He spoke without emotion, his voice flat and steady. He was a supervisor delivering a report. Then he got to Friday. He described coming home, the lilies, the voices through the window. He repeated the conversation verbatim, his memory seared with every cruel word. Jamal said, "I'll take the truck. He won't need it where he's going." Brianna said they could get 22 grand for it. Tasha had a list. Anita Miller listened, her face unreadable. She didn't interrupt. She just made small, precise notes on a pad of her own. "She has the login to my personal savings account," Marcus continued, pushing a printed statement across the table. She thought she had already emptied the joint account, but she was lying. "On Saturday, I baited her. I told her to buy a purse as a gift." He explained the test, showing her the screenshots from his phone. The charge from Coach, followed by the $3,000 transfer to an unknown account. That's grand theft by deception in the state of Georgia. If the amount is over $2,500, he said, surprising himself with the legal term he'd learned in his late-night research. For the first time, a flicker of a smile touched Anita Miller's lips. "You've been doing your homework, Mr. Jackson." "I have," Marcus said. He then pulled out his phone. "There's one more thing." He explained the phone call he had made to Tasha an hour before coming to the lawyer's office. He had used a recording app. He pressed play. His own voice came through the speaker, sounding tired and defeated. "Tasha, listen. I think you're right. Things have been tense. Maybe you do need some space. Maybe you should go stay with Brianna for a few days." Tasha's voice, dripping with false sympathy, replied, "Oh, Marcus, are you sure? I don't want to leave you." "I'm sure," his recorded self said. "I think it's for the best. We need to figure things out." "Okay, baby," she'd said, her voice brightening. "If you really think so, I'll pack a bag and head over there this afternoon. We can talk in a few days." The recording ended. Marcus looked at the attorney. "She thinks I'm giving her what she wants. She thinks I'm abandoning the property. She's going to go to the house this afternoon, and tomorrow her plan is to change the locks." Anita Miller leaned back in her chair, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. "Mr. Jackson, you are not the man your wife thinks you are. That is your greatest asset." She leaned forward again. "Here is what we are going to do. Your name is the only one on the deed to the house? Yes, I bought it before we were married. And the truck? Mine, paid in full. Title is in my name only." "Excellent," she said. "The savings account is in your name only, correct?" "Yes." "Okay. First, you are not going to say another word to her or her family, not one. You will block their numbers after we are done here. Second, we are going to file for legal separation today. I'll have the petition drafted and filed by lunch. We will cite irreconcilable differences and financial malfeasance." She looked at his screenshots. "This little maneuver with the $3,000 is a gift. Third, you will go directly to your bank. You will close the joint account. You will open a new personal account at a completely different bank. You will move your savings into it immediately. You will then go to your HR department and reroute your direct deposit to this new account. All of this must be done today." She paused, her eyes locking onto his. "She is planning to change the locks on your house tomorrow. You are going to beat her to it. You will go to your home this evening with a locksmith and you will have every lock changed. You are not abandoning your property. You are securing it." "What about her things?" Marcus asked, the thought of it making him feel sick. "We will arrange a time, with a police escort present, for her to retrieve her personal belongings. Anything purchased with joint funds during the marriage is marital property and will be divided by the court. But given her fraudulent behavior," she tapped the screenshot of the $3,000 transfer, "we are in a very, very strong position to argue that she has already taken her share, and then some. Her plan to seize your assets is premeditated and documented thanks to you." Marcus felt a wave of relief so profound it almost made him dizzy. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't alone. He had a plan. He had an advocate. "What is this going to cost?" he asked, the practical side of him taking over. "My retainer is $5,000, Anita said, "and I bill at $450 an hour. Based on what you've shown me, Mr. Jackson, I'd say it's the best money you'll ever spend. She and her family tried to strip you of everything you've ever worked for. We are going to make sure the only thing she leaves this marriage with is her expensive purse and a very hard lesson in underestimation." Marcus pulled out the checkbook for his savings account, the one Tasha didn't know he had. He wrote a check for $5,000 to Miller and Associates without a moment's hesitation. It felt like buying his own freedom. The strike was executed with the quiet precision of a logistics expert. Marcus left Anita Miller's office at 10:15 a.m., a man with a mission. The grief and shock had been transmuted into pure, cold focus. This was now a series of tasks on a checklist. Task 1. Secure the finances. 10:45 a.m. He walked into a branch of a local credit union, miles from his neighborhood. He sat down with a personal banker, a kind-faced woman named Sharon. "I need to close a joint account I have at another bank, and I need to open a new checking and savings account here today," he said calmly. He presented his ID. He didn't offer any explanation. He just stated the facts. He filled out the paperwork, and within 20 minutes, he had a new account number. Task 2. Transfer the assets. 11:20 a.m. He drove to the branch of his old bank. He walked up to the teller, the same one who had flirted with Tasha a few months back. The teller smiled. "Hey man, how's it going?" "I need to close account number ending in 4732 and withdraw the full balance in the form of a cashier's check," Marcus said, his voice flat. He also presented the withdrawal slip for his personal savings account for the full $5,281.90. The teller's smile faltered. "Closing it? Is your wife with you? Usually we need both parties to—" "I am a legal owner of the account, and I am instructing the bank to close it," Marcus said, his voice dropping a full octave. It was the voice he used when a forklift driver was ignoring safety protocols. It was a voice that did not brook argument. He slid his ID across the counter. "And I am withdrawing the full balance of my personal savings account. Now." The teller paled and scurried off to find a manager. The manager, a man in a cheap, $200 suit, came over. He reviewed the account. Marcus's name was on it. There was no legal reason to deny the request. 15 minutes later, Marcus walked out with 2 cashier's checks totaling $8,429.18. He drove immediately back to the credit union and deposited them into his new, untouchable account. Task 3, reroute the income. 1:05 p.m. He drove to the distribution center. He walked past the whirring conveyor belts and the beeping of the forklifts. The familiar sounds of his professional life, a strange comfort. He went straight to the HR office. He handed the HR manager the new direct deposit form. "I need this updated for the next pay cycle," he said, effective immediately. The manager, a woman who had known him for a decade, looked at him with concern. "Everything okay, Marcus?" "Just making some changes," he said. "A little financial housekeeping." She nodded and processed the form. The pipeline that fed his entire life's work into Tasha's hands was now severed. Task 4, secure the property. 5:30 p.m. He had called a 24/7 locksmith from the motel and scheduled him for 5:30 p.m. He arrived at his house to find the locksmith's van already there. The street was quiet. Tasha's Honda was gone. Brianna's Lexus was gone. Jamal's Altima was gone. They were at Brianna's house, he knew, celebrating their victory, waiting for him to abandon his home so they could swoop in. The locksmith, a burly man with a tattoo of a dragon on his forearm, got to work. It took him less than an hour to change the locks on the front door, the back door, and the sliding glass door to the patio. He charged $380. Marcus paid him in cash and took the 3 new sets of keys. He walked into his silent house. It looked the same, but everything felt different. It was no longer a home. It was a property. His property. At 6:45 p.m., his phone, which he had not yet blocked, began to light up. It was Tasha. The first text was simple confusion. Tasha, 6:45 p.m. "My key isn't working." Marcus read it and felt nothing. He set the phone on the kitchen counter. Tasha, 6:47 p.m. "Marcus, did you change the locks? Why would you do that? This is crazy. Call me." He watched the phone. A missed call. Then another. Tasha, 6:52 p.m. "I'm locked out of my own house. What is going on? Are you in there? This isn't funny." He could picture her on the front porch, her initial confidence turning to frustration, then to panic. He heard a car pull up. Headlights washed across the living room wall. It was Brianna's Lexus. He heard doors slam. "Brianna, 7:01 p.m. from Tasha's phone. "Marcus, this is Brianna. Tasha is very upset. You need to open this door right now. She has a right to be in her home." Marcus picked up his phone and typed a single sentence addressed to Tasha. "A process server will be at your sister's residence in the morning to deliver the separation papers. Do not contact me again. All future communication will be through my attorney, Anita Miller." He sent the text. Then he blocked her number. He blocked Brianna's number. He blocked Jamal's number. He blocked her mother's number. The silence that followed was absolute. But the digital record remained. Over the next few hours, voicemails began to pile up from a number he didn't recognize, her brother Dion's. Anita had advised him to let them accumulate as evidence. Voicemail 1, 7:30 p.m., Dion, angry. "Marcus, man, what the hell is your problem? You can't just lock your wife out of her house. Call me back, now." Voicemail 2, 8:15 p.m., Tasha, crying, from Dion's phone. "Marcus, please. I don't understand what's happening. Why are you doing this? What did I do? Please just talk to me." The tears he was a sucker for. Voicemail 3, 9 p.m., Brianna, screaming from Dion's phone. "You think you're so smart, you low-life bastard? You will regret this. We will take you for everything you have. Tasha has rights." Voicemail 4, 10:45 p.m., Tasha, pleading. Okay, I'm sorry. Was it about the money? I can put it back. I was scared. I can explain everything. Please, baby, don't do this. Don't throw away 8 years. I love you, Marcus." He listened to them all, one after the other, his face a mask of stone. The love she professed was just another tool, the last one in her box now that the others had failed. He deleted the messages. He had the recordings. He didn't need the performance. He walked through his house, the house he had paid for, the house they had planned to steal, and for the first time in a very long time, he felt safe. The strike was complete. The consequences were just beginning. The fallout was not a single, dramatic explosion, but a series of controlled demolitions, each one dismantling a piece of the life Tasha had built on his foundation. The consequences cascade was swift and merciless, precisely because it was rooted entirely in the unassailable logic of cause and effect. Consequence number 1. The process server. Tuesday, 9:12 a.m. A certified legal process server, a tall man with a perpetually bored expression, arrived at Dion and Brianna's $600,000 Alpharetta home. Brianna answered the door, dressed in a $300 designer loungewear set. "Tasha Jackson?" the server asked. Tasha came to the door, her face puffy from crying. She was served with the petition for legal separation. The papers detailed the date of separation as the previous Friday, the day Marcus overheard the plot, and cited financial malfeasance, specifically referencing a fraudulent transfer of $3,000. Tasha's face went white. Her entire narrative, the abandoned, heartbroken wife, crumbled before she even had a chance to perform it. The legal battle had begun on his terms, with his evidence. Consequence number 2, the financial blackout. Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Tasha, desperate, drove her 2019 Honda Accord to the bank. She had the checkbook for the joint account and intended to write a check to herself for the remaining balance. The $147.28 left after her own transfer. She presented the check to the teller. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the teller said, avoiding her eyes. "This account has been closed." "What?" "It can't be closed," Tasha insisted, her voice rising. "My husband's paycheck goes in there." "The account was closed yesterday by the primary account holder. There are no funds," the teller repeated. Tasha then tried to use the debit card linked to the account at the ATM. "Card invalid," the screen flashed. She tried to log into the mobile app. "User not found." The financial umbilical cord had been cut. She was stranded on a financial island with nothing but a $451 purse and the rapidly dwindling $3,000 she had stolen. Consequence number 3, the failed counterattack. Wednesday. Brianna and Dion, furious and arrogant, paid for a consultation with a high-powered divorce attorney in Buckhead, a man who charged a $10,000 retainer. They sat with Tasha in his plush office, recounting their version of the story. A hard-working wife emotionally abandoned by a cold, controlling husband who had locked her out of the marital home. The lawyer listened patiently. "And the home is in both your names?" he asked. "Well, no," Tasha admitted. "He bought it before we were married." "But you contributed to the mortgage payments?" "My name isn't on the account, but his salary was our money," she argued. "And this financial malfeasance claim," the lawyer pressed, "this $3,000 transfer? He told me to buy a purse. The rest was just me moving money between our accounts," she said, her voice strained. The lawyer sighed. "Ma'am, you transferred funds from a joint account to a personal account that your husband had no access to, immediately after he instructed you to make a specific gift purchase. You did this while living in a home you have no legal title to, from which you were planning to illegally evict him. His attorney is Anita Miller?" The lawyer grimaced. "She's a shark. You don't have a case for spousal support. You have a potential criminal liability for theft. My advice," he said, standing up to end the $800 one-hour meeting, "is to give back the money and pray he's feeling generous. I will not be taking this case." They left his office in stunned silence. The system they thought they could manipulate was not on their side. Consequence number 4, the personal belongings. Saturday, 10 a.m. As arranged by Anita, Tasha was permitted to retrieve her personal effects. Marcus was not there. 2 sheriff's deputies stood in the driveway as Tasha, Brianna, and Jamal arrived. They were given exactly 1 hour. They could take clothing, jewelry, and personal keepsakes. They were explicitly forbidden from taking furniture, electronics, or any other household items. Brianna tried to direct Jamal to start unplugging the 65-inch Samsung TV. "Ma'am, step away from the television," one of the deputies said, his hand resting on his belt. "That is considered marital property and will be handled by the court. You are here for personal items only." Tasha, humiliated, packed her clothes into trash bags. She looked around the house that was supposed to be hers at the couch she had picked out, the dining table where she had plotted her husband's ruin. It was all his. She had been a guest, a long-term, overprivileged guest whose visiting hours had just expired. They left with 3 trash bags of clothes and a box of makeup. Consequence number 5? The repossession. 2 weeks later. The $450 payment for Tasha's Honda Accord was automatically drafted from the now-defunct joint account. The payment was, of course, rejected. Marcus, under Anita's advisement, did nothing. The bank sent a delinquency notice to the house. He forwarded it to Anita. A second notice followed. Then, one morning at 5 a.m., a tow truck quietly hooked up the Honda from where it was parked in front of Brianna's house and hauled it away. Tasha had lost her car, a direct consequence of the financial life she had taken for granted. The loss of the car, a $24,000 vehicle, was a public humiliation in her status-conscious family. Dion, a car salesman, was mortified. The cracks in the family's united front began to show. The cascade continued. Tasha, with no income and no savings, became a permanent and unwelcome guest at her sister's house. Her presence, once a source of sisterly bonding, became a strain on Brianna's marriage and finances. Jamal, who had been promised a truck, got nothing. The family, once united in their greed, began to bicker and blame each other for the failure of their perfect plan. They had tried to steal a kingdom and had ended up losing the one thing they thought they could always count on: the quiet, steady labor of the man they had so fatally underestimated. 1 year later, the rain fell in soft, rhythmic sheets against the window of a small, tidy office in a warehouse complex near Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. It was a cleansing rain, washing the dust from the asphalt, making the world seem new. Inside, Marcus sat at a simple, $200 metal desk, a stack of invoices on one side and a thermal mug of coffee on the other. The sign on the door, stenciled in clean black letters, read, "Jackson Freight Logistics." The resolution of his legal separation had been swift and brutal for Tasha. Faced with irrefutable evidence of premeditated fraud, she had been advised by her new, less expensive lawyer to settle. She walked away with her personal clothing, her makeup, and a one-time payment of $10,000, which Anita Miller had negotiated down from her initial demand of half the value of the house. From that $10,000, she had to pay her own legal fees, which amounted to nearly $4,000. Her net profit from 8 years of marriage and 1 failed coup was a paltry $6,000, less than the cost of the retainer she had paid the first lawyer. Marcus kept the house, the truck, his savings, his pension, and his dignity. He had sold the house in South Fulton 6 months ago. He couldn't stand the memories that haunted its rooms. He sold it for a modest profit, clearing $45,000 after paying off the remaining mortgage. He didn't use that money to buy another house. He used it to invest in himself. He took the principle he knew best, consistency, and applied it to his own dream, the one Dion had so arrogantly mocked. He had spent his life managing other people's freight. He knew the routes, the clients, the rates. He used his network, the connections he had built over 15 years of being reliable and fair. He took $35,000 of the money from the house sale and made a down payment on a used but well-maintained 2017 Freightliner Cascadia, a serious rig that cost $75,000. He used his pristine credit to finance the rest. He kept his job as warehouse supervisor, working his 40 hours a week and on weekends, he started driving. He took the short-haul routes nobody wanted, the late-night runs from Atlanta to Chattanooga, from Macon to Birmingham. It was grueling work, but it was his. Every mile driven, every invoice paid was for him. The first month, he cleared a profit of only $1,500 after fuel and insurance. The second month, it was $2,200. Within 6 months, he had enough consistent business to hire his first driver, a reliable older man he knew from his old job. Now, a year later, Jackson Freight Logistics owned 2 trucks and had 3 drivers. He was clearing over $15,000 a month in profit after all expenses. He had quit his supervisor job and was finally his own boss. He was no longer moving boxes for someone else's dream. He was building his own, box by box, mile by mile. He now lived in a small, rented apartment in College Park, a space that was modest and functional. It wasn't filled with $1,800 sofas or decorative pillows. It was filled with peace. On the wall was a framed photo, not of a smiling wife, but of his 2 trucks, side by side. On his desk, next to the invoices, was a drawing from his nephew, a crayon depiction of a big truck with Uncle Marcus written in shaky letters. That was true wealth. He received a letter a month ago, forwarded from his lawyer. It was from Tasha. He had almost thrown it away, but curiosity got the better of him. The tone was different. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow, weary tone. She was working as a receptionist again, making $16 an hour. She was living in a small apartment with Jamal, who was constantly asking her for money. Brianna and Dion barely spoke to her. She had written to apologize. A real apology, it seemed. Full of regret for what she had thrown away, for the man she had failed to see. She asked if they could meet for coffee, just to talk. He thought about it for a long time. He thought about the man who had stood in the shadows, listening to his life being dismantled. He thought about the cold motel room and the taste of ash in his mouth. He thought about the quiet satisfaction of changing the locks. He picked up a pen and wrote a short reply on the back of the letter. Tasha, I have forgiven you. Not for you, but for me. I can't carry that anger anymore. It's too heavy, and my trucks are already full. I wish you peace. But my life has no room for you in it anymore. The road I'm on only goes forward. He sealed the letter and put it in the outgoing mail. The rain had stopped. A sliver of sunlight broke through the clouds, reflecting off the wet pavement, bright and full of promise. Marcus took a sip of his coffee. It was just right. He had made it himself, and it was enough. The real lesson wasn't about money or houses or trucks. It was that some people see love as a partnership, and others see it as a resource to be extracted. True wealth isn't in what you can buy. It's in what you can build. It's in the quiet confidence of knowing your own worth, a worth that can't be listed on a piece of paper or divided up at a dining room table. It's the peace you find when you stop fixing what's broken and start building something new, something that is entirely, indisputably, your own.